All right, this is a brand new show launching on the Exquisite World Global Network, and I'm so excited about this. Exploring the blueprints of your life, Eastern and Western astrology considered, with Debbi Coleen. And this is going to be a regular event where Debbi Coleen is going to explore with all of her tools in her tool bag about what's going on and how the different influences on our lives, it might have an impact on us during a certain, segment of time. And according to astrology, according to Enneagram, according to Starseed Blueprint, Chinese influence, astrology influence, all of it. And because Debbi's got a lot in her tool bag, plus she has help from the guides, so that anything that's really going on, I'm sure, will be brought to her awareness and she'll share with us. So I'm really excited about this, and we're going to start today by kind of a little short review on Year of the Horse and then Year of the Sheep, which is what we're going into. So we're at the very end, January 31st, 2015, and we'll begin this new end and beginning of these Chinese astrology New Year. So thank you, Debbi Coleen. Thank you for doing this with us and sharing all your gifts.
Wow, thanks, Catherine. It's always so much fun.
Yes.
It's really, really helpful to look at these year-long influences too. I really appreciate the Chinese lunar calendar work with that, so that we can be prepared and we can, with our great brains, have an idea of what's upcoming. It's great to start with a little review of what's gone before, which is Year of the Horse. That is completed. It's completing now. Chinese New Year's in 2015 is February 19th, which is fairly soon, 20-ish days away. And so up until then, we're having kind of a review, a bit of a review of what has gone, what's happening for each of us individually, plus globally, no doubt, in Year of the Horse.
So as each year, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but each year ends, there's that little period is a bit of a review of that horse, like in this case, horse energy, before we go into the sheep. Is that how it works?
There always seems to be that. I pick up on a shift when things start to take us back and remind us of things that happen in the year. It just seems to be that way, so I'm going with that.
Right. and we're talking about collectively here on the show, but if people want to use all of these tools, they want to have this kind of influence or understanding of their particular year and all the different influences, they can connect with you privately for a private session at starseedblueprint.com, correct?
That's right. I find it's really particularly helpful to do a combination of the Chinese year-long influence based on the year that they are born, so their year, in combination with this year's sheep energy, and also to take into account their sun sign as well. It just really seems to be an ideal personalized view. And sometimes people don't understand the connection between Western and Eastern astrology. So just to say a minute about that is that the Chinese astrology starts with the big picture. So what we're most used to in that is the animal sign. But everyone personally also has a month sign, a day sign, an hour sign to represent that time of their birth. So the Chinese picture sort of starts with the big picture and works down to the smaller, whereas in the Western system we start with the very smallest, which is the moment of our birth. That's when our Western chart kind of gets solidified, and then it works into the larger picture from there. So we just come at it from different directions, plus we use very unique to our cultures, symbolism.
Right.
You know, it's different words, different symbols, but there is an overlap. It does match up. and with not much difficulty too. It's very, very alike when you know the Eastern and Western symbolism and what they represent. The bigger picture of what they represent, it's not that difficult to overlap, although I do notice there's some disagreement, but in my mind, it works.
Well, and the thing is, for some people who never follow any of these understandings, they don't know, and they are not interested in knowing. Well, so the question would be, what's the point of the knowing, of the having these understandings? And
right.
I just, for me, it's about knowing that this certain energy or influence would support me this way. If I know about it, I can, when you know Mercury's in retrograde, for instance, you can know, you don't have to be afraid of it or not, doesn't paralyze you, but you just take other precautions. You second confirm things. You are aware of communications might be a little off, or you have an awareness. I guess that these other things might be influencing. I kind of liken it to, if you want to go sailing, you check the weather and see if there's any wind, and if there is, what direction, and so forth. So it's kind of like that for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true, and for each person, it's going to have a different meaning and a different level of importance, and that's only natural, and that's the way it should be. Is everybody takes it the way that works for them, because we're all here to explore the world, the physical realm, in our own unique way. So we pick what works and we let go of what doesn't work.
Right.
In whatever lifetime we're in whatever ray of energy we're here on, it's very personal, and so it should be. So if people don't, have importance for this, that's fine. That's not their meaning in this life, and it's not meant to be.
Right.
So, but for people that it does make a difference to people that it makes sense, has a resonance, an aha, even a slight bit of interest, that's great. And we try to do the best job we can for them. For me, I'm really, really all about patterns. That's what makes sense to me. I see patterns in everything, how, cycles, and it's, to do with the way my brain works, and it really doesn't matter, but I like it. I like to know, like you say, it gives a flavor to the year. It helps me to pay attention. It helps me to go into the metaphysical understanding and to connect with what is this about me? What is here for me to learn from? And because I'm a dog, I tend to be a worrier. And when I see these cycles, I go, okay, well, there is something going on here far larger than me, and let me just relax into that and just be who I am. But of course, the big point is to pay attention in whatever way, be conscious. That's the best way to live our life, to pay attention to our thoughts, to our feelings, to our physical sensations, to other people, to signs in nature, in what way works for us, and always to recognize that we're expanding that awareness all the time. We've just come through a huge jump in awareness too that is open for us. This new dimension, this new evolution of a possibility for us that we're crossing over into. Things are going to be a little bit different, and we can start paying attention to those differences, because paying attention is what it's all about.
Yeah. And I know, I think that's even an important point. Like you said, everybody has a different path, and some people are going to be more conscious and aware, and other people aren't. And it's fine. Like I know there's people who get up in the morning, they don't check the weather, they're not concerned about any of that stuff. That's how they live their life. They just go and seem to just have a fairly easy life, and that's fine. But for some of us who don't have those that whatever it is, that lifetime experience, we have different ones. So it just different strokes for different folks, I think.
Absolutely.
But having an awareness of environment, of the shifts on the planet, being aware of this new shift in energy, I think is kind of a key to helping us, if we wish to, understand and get along better. That's what I'm finding is when I see conflict going on or chaos or whatever, and I have an understanding, a bit of an awareness, oh, okay, I can see this as a pattern. I can kind of not take things so personally.
Yes. And so it's good to look at what we've gone through and to see how it meshes into our experience and maybe our understanding of what's gone on in the world. So I'm just going to talk about some of the influences of Year of the Horse that is completing. And I'm not going to reference it to anything in particular, and people can, connect with that and see how it might have been, for the highlights in their own year of the Horse.
And Debbie, they can go back and listen to when we did Year of the Horse last January or whatever it was before it started. It's on. Yeah. It's still in the archives on lgrcc.com. So we'll be expanding. Just so people know, we will be expanding into a bigger space for the Exquisite World Global Network, which is going to have different shows on different subjects. But for right now, all the links will go to lgrcc.com. In the future, it'll be ewgn.com. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, Year of the Horse is the perfect year for that to happen. It's a very unique energy that Year of the Horse brought to us in 2014, but it's all about freedom. And horse is an animal of freedom. It has a beautiful spirit, and it can't in any worthwhile way be subjugated to anything. Can be a bit capricious, impulsive, definitely reactive in circumstances. The horse will gallop in one direction and suddenly veer into another. And people may have recognized that in this year, that it was very hard to sometimes predict personally and also for other people just how people are going to react and what kind of opinions people might have about things and what's going to happen on the world front. It can be very different influences, although horse is a pack animal. So what one horse in the pack does, usually the horses will follow their leader. But it is all about moving into, more freedom and then also that reactivity that I spoke about, the nervousness. Horse energy is very nervous. So people may have been experiencing more worry this year, more anxiety, more awareness, that alertness of horse to what's going to happen. And of course, each of the animal signs has its own relationship to horse energy. Plus, in each year, there are what the Chinese refer to as lucky and unlucky stars, which represent different kinds of luck, both good and bad. So each year is very different. I won't talk that as much as just talking generally about horse energy. So if people are looking for more individual understanding, it would be good for them to go back to what we talked about last year, because we did go through each of the animal signs last year. And we will, in the next couple segments of this show, be going through the animals for Year of the Sheep. So right. I think that's probably enough to say about horse, just general indicators of what we have gone through. Okay,
and now what are we coming into then?
Well, sheep year is all about peace and harmony. So we're going to have a couple periods, notably around the vernal equinox, and then again at the very end in next December 2016. There's going to be a couple of periods that are very difficult because, of course, whenever we evoke a certain kind of energy, whether it's horse's nervousness or sheep's need for peace and harmony, the energies that oppose that or get in the way of that are going to be quite apparent, so that we can go through them and let the energy of the year bring their magic to them, and some different kind of learning will happen to either resolve or subdue the opposing energies.
Wow.
So we can be pretty sure that individually and globally, we will have experiences come up that are not about peace and harmony, especially as we move into the sheep energy of 2015. And we may as well be prepared, but also knowing that sheep energy trumps everything this year, not forever perhaps. And so there's that intense sensitivity that sheep has to disharmony in any way. And so when sheep has the ascendancy, there is a tendency to strong arm perhaps, or disregard, or to force, or whatever kind of energy that individuals have, anything that doesn't match with that overriding yearly energy. So we'll see a variety of different ways to have some kind of maybe reaction to anything that's disharmonious.
So it's supporting us on in the pursuit, or in the not even pursuit. It's supporting us in the objective of having peace. So whatever it takes to bring us to that.
Yes, and whatever it takes will be interpreted by different individuals in different ways, basic, and also not just individuals, but political. What do you call it? Political regions or corporations. Each different group or individual has a different way of dealing with this spectrum of harmony, disharmony.
Okay.
So we will find that there will be many different reactions, but the underlying reason for that will be this need for harmony.
Right.
And so what we will get to see is what works and what doesn't work. With, suppression is kind of one of one of sheep's kind of tools, or ignoring, or, rules is another one, So we may find some of those.
So sheep likes rules or not?
Sheep does like rules, yes. Sheep likes rules. Sheep likes people to follow the rules. Sheep, and because these agreed on ways to deal with disagreement is what sheep counts on in working things out. But we're going to find that the basic energy of sheep is going to modulate over this year our reactiveness, or our responses. Our reactiveness, on the other hand, will be high. Sheep is very sensitive to anything that is out of harmony. Its response is modulation, kind of squashing things down, or having things come up and us deciding whether do we want to be right, do we want to win, or do we want peace? And sheep's answer, and unequivocally, will be we want peace. So sheep is often the first to maybe give up some of their rights, their so-called rights, in order to bring a measure of harmony. But in giving up those rights, that doesn't often solve the problem. So there's an ongoing process of looking at issues and expanding our context of what is acceptable. So in this year, what will happen is people will look at the issues that are causing dissension, causing reactivity, and widen the scope of the answer. So more allowable choice of what's right in order to bring the greatest amount of happiness. On the other side of that, though, is people who have fears and issues that say, oh, please, don't talk to me about that. You only have to talk to me about that, and I get frightened. So you're not allowed to talk about it. What's going to happen is people are going to need to take responsibility for their reactions to things, and to say, well, yeah, it is my fear, so why am I expecting other people to give up their freedoms, give up their rights in the face of my fear? So in other words, whose problem is this is going to be one of the more advanced stages of problem solving that will come up. Because until we get to that stage, we don't have enough, there's still going to be outbreaks of non-harmony, of disharmony.
Right. And it so often happens that people do exactly that. I was talking about something the other day about death, and a person on social media, and a person said to me, Catherine, most people wouldn't know what you're talking about. So in other words, don't talk about it. And I thought, well, if most people don't know what I'm talking about, wouldn't it make more sense for me to talk about it so that more people can know what I'm talking about? But her obvious statement was for me to shut up, because right. I was causing fear because I said, somebody made a comment about death, and I said, well, why don't we call it something else, like rebirth, or just dropping the body, which is what happens? Why do, and then she's like, well, because most people wouldn't know what you were talking about. Well, that's because they have a different experience of death. But if we're going to move to a different understanding, we're going to have to talk about it. But
see, there's a really good indication of where a lot of our issues come up is when you can listen. When people talk about my understanding, I wouldn't understand what you're talking about. Or when somebody speaks on behalf of a perceived whole, that is a person, that is a situation that we often get into where we assume that people are going to back us up, that we're the majority, because we have identified with a certain thought or a certain set of principles. We assume that everyone in that group that we're identifying with agrees with us, and that is where you notice that people have not really addressed their individuality, and therein lies a huge problem. And that is something that will definitely come up in Year of the Sheep, because that very identification in that unself development way, there's a good word for us, is really the root of most causes of this kind of reactivity. That this will be a year that will lead us into an understanding for many people that this is what needs to happen, is we need to begin a process of going deep.
Yeah, we've been going deep.
Going deep is like knowing the self, and to move out of this artificial belief that because we believe something, because we have created a world for ourselves that seems to agree or obviously disagree. We've got, oftentimes that's a kind of, that us against them. Wherever there's an us, there may very well be a them, and we can start to dissociate from the us, which, is not necessarily what sheep likes.
Well, I thought that part of her statement actually was interesting because it felt kind of arrogant. Like she was saying, you can say that to me because I understand what you're talking about, but you can't say that out there for everyone because the rest of the people won't get it. And I'm thinking, well, I don't filter in that way. I say what I think, what I have experienced. I speak from my knowing, and I just let other people, I assume everyone has the ability to either get what I'm saying or ask me about it or whatever, but it's just not, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but it was really clear that she wanted me to know she got it, but most people wouldn't, and I just thought it was humorous.
Well, that's a definite personality type, and that is a strategy that will happen in sheep year, where someone takes it upon themselves to create peace by giving you the rules, fixing things for you, giving you the point of view, to not rock the boat, and also speaking on behalf of an imaginary group that she has or he or. And we all have them. It's really important to recognize that when these things come up individually for us, that we're seeing a mirror of something in the side of ourselves. We have our front view, and there's something behind that too. We all have our own us and them. So if we have a reaction or a response to something that is uncomfortable, that means that both sides of that equation are somewhere in us.
Right.
So we can look inside, and this would be this is a very high level way to, a high, it's a kind of a movement that, many people will move into the place of looking at, well, what is this about me? Because
a higher awareness.
That's the ultimate place where we can get in touch with our peace when we separate ourselves from identifying with us and them groups. That's a really important step to bringing true peace into our world. And when everybody has discovered their true peace, then we can start talking together to make a context where, all these individuals can come together. Okay. We're just moving. This is the first cycle of the zodiac where we're really starting to move out of tribal energies. Okay,
so as we're moving into sheep year, and it's supporting, so the cycle goes from February 19th until when?
I'm not exactly sure. Sometime in February next year. I think it's actually in the end of January 2016.
Okay. So what I understand then is that the sheep year has a influence, and then we each have the year we were born in has an influence in our personal year working with the collective year. Is that where you want to go with this?
Well, I think that you and I will do a couple of other shows, and we'll talk in each show about 4 of the different 12 animals. So
people can know that will be something they can look for. So if you were born in a certain year, then that will have a influence.
We'll speak individually to the relationship that each of the animal years has in relationship to sheep year, and how it reacts or responds to sheep energy. So right now I'm just talking generally, because there's also a few other characteristics of sheep that we'll notice, and it's taking responsibility is one of them. Sheep are very responsible. They're very willing to do their part to make the whole work. So, that's part of their commitment to peace and harmony, is to do their bit. And they'll do more than their bit. Sheep in their jobs are usually ones that uncomplainingly do a lot of, behind the scenes work.
Right.
They're possibly, volunteers as well, helping other people cope with their lives. They're really willing to step into the world and create their peace and harmony and work with the sensitivities of groups by taking care of the details. And sometimes they're the messy details of life. So that reliability, responsibility that sheep have, as well as their sensitivity, all these ivities that sheep have, they're really kind, but they're also very lucky. The universe, it's sort of the meek shall inherit the earth energy that we see, and the sheep are the meek animals, and so much is given to them. People like sheep for the most part, other than some of the, year signs that don't, the energies don't jibe well with the sheep. But for the most part, sheep are well liked because they're modest and unassuming. So this is kind of a modest and unassuming year energy that's coming up. We're not going to see people making big moves and getting away with takeovers, and arrogance is not going to be very well received. It's not going to go over well.
Nice.
It's a year when we're going to have to start taking responsibility for how we are in the world. And it's going to be in unusual ways too, because it's those kind of experiences where, someone is telling you to, in a way, pipe down, don't rock the boat. Well, that's not going to be too comfortable either. We're going to have to find ways to recognize when we're trying to subdue other people in unfair ways. So the context of what fits for people on the planet is going to have to expand. The kind of, and I'm going to make, kind of a sweeping generalization that is not true, but it's representative, that, this American standard of how the world should work is going to have to expand. And we're going to find some controversial things like same-sex marriage and taking care of, this underlying feeling that we seem to have that, the poor deserve to be poor because, they're just lazy. And that's a sweeping generalization that really, we're going to have to start looking at the details of how to take care of the people on the planet, not as if, they deserve it, but as if, this is something where we're brothers, we're family.
It feels to me like it's time to look at some details about things how did things get to a certain place? Because we keep hearing people say, about the past, never again on different issues. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the resultant, or are you looking at the lead up? Are you willing to look at what was the atmosphere? What were the contributing factors, the contributing players?
Well, I think what we're doing here is we're talking about something quite different, because oftentimes we don't need to go into the past of things. Sometimes that's not the point. But what we're talking about here is settling blame, pointing fingers, and that's the energy that needs to be looked at. It isn't about why we're assigning blame. It's not about the past so much as why are we trying to decide who's right and wrong here? But when it comes to that question of, do you want to be right or do you want peace?
But when you're looking at a situation like you said about poverty, global poverty, it's not about the blame, okay, then we have, and I get that, but so we have a situation.
So what sheep energy does is steps in and does something about the hungry people. It doesn't care why they're hungry, whether they deserve it or not. They're going to take food to the table of the people who don't have food. Bottom line. It's about good works. And that's what happens in Year of Sheep. Don't get hung up on the past. We get into doing what needs to be done based on our feeling of what we want for our children, and that's what we do for everybody on the planet. So we provide food, we provide shelter, we provide clothing, because that's what human beings need. So let's just do that.
Oh, this is a really nice, because now I really can feel what the conflict is, or part of it is that we've been trying to, as you say, look for who to blame for it instead of putting that energy into just like, let's just feed the kids.
Let's look to the light. What do we want for everyone? And this is where it starts to grow. You know, we start with those basics of food, shelter, clothing. And when we start thinking of everyone as a child of God, a child of the universe, perhaps, then we see that it doesn't matter. We get beyond the issues of who deserves, and we look at and why they're in that spot and whether we agree with her, who should get more. It's like, no, for everyone.
Right.
Everyone deserves to have the basics of a good life. And avoiding that, some people are just going to take from others and what, it doesn't matter.
Right.
What are we going to do to take care of the people who are not well? The basic healing for people who are not well. And yes, this is going to start leading us down a very rocky road of people's habits and behaviors and, interactions and history. But sheep is not so interested in the history. They're very pragmatic. What does that person need in this moment? Why does that person not have shoes? Let's get them shoes. And that's very practical, and it brings peace. So
there's no judgment. It's not about shame and blame and all that. It's just just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing.
It is, although it's very well leavened with a wisdom of putting the energy where it's most useful as well, because sheep doesn't waste time and energy on something that's not going to work, even though, of course, it will, that's a learning process.
Right.
So this is where we get into, this is a discussion that begins on the planet. And, as the discussion will be a difficult one, and we've been in this discussion for a long time, but it's a different discussion now because we are in a new evolution, and we are not constrained by a lot of genetic issues that were magnetized into our DNA in the past, and we don't need to go into that.
Now, we've talked about that on another show. People can look for that on the lgrcc.com.
So what that does is it means that we are now working in our own individual energies, and there's going to be a lot of learning and a lot of ahas on a large scale basis of people recognizing that you can't, the perceived us and them groups are shifting, and that will be a part of sheep year as well, as people move into helping or believing in what's the bottom line here? What do people need? And so we start with the obvious basics, and over time that will become more and more sophisticated as we move into realizing that really what people need is unconditional love. And unconditional love, when the basics of food, shelter, clothing, etc. are provided, that is speaking love in a very physical way. But we will be able to start a discussion on the planet, or an experience on the planet, of what unconditional love really is. And the best way to go about this is the pragmatic way of sheep, of, turning the cheek. Because we can't be caught up in our reactivity to people. It's time for us to let go of the historical facts that are different for every person, and get on with, well, what needs to be done right now in the present to improve the lot of every individual on this planet in the most practical way.
Wow, that feels like a complete thought there, Debbie. I feel like we should leave it there for our first introduction to this series of shows, because we're going to do this a couple times a month and bring people information on the different animals of the Chinese as well, astrology, but also bring in all the other patterns that as they occur, whether it's planetary, whether it's to do with the enneagrams, whether it's to do with certain other influences, I guess I should say. So this is, to me, thank you so much for doing this, Debbie. I think people will find this very helpful, and I appreciate you giving us your time and your insights.
You're welcome, Catherine. It's always so much fun.
It is. It is. Well, I look forward to the next one. And for those of you listening, for the meantime, go to lgrcc.com to look for all the shows, as well as don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and on the website, and check us out on social media as well. It's been awesome, and looking at the patterns of our lives, this is an awesome chat. Till next time, take care. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.